This is the vlog for December 1st, 2018. Um, what was I gonna... So, I think yesterday I talked a bit about Mobile Suit Gundam Narrative, which is the sequel to Gundam Unicorn. And frustratingly, I found out today that yesterday was the release of Gundam Narrative, but in theaters in Japan. I don't have any information on when it's supposed to be released online. I would love for it to be within the month or so, but I imagine it will probably be quite a bit longer than that. I seem to remember at the very least, the initial Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn was released in theaters as well. And I want to say that the turnaround for putting it up online and available as a Blu-ray purchase was very quick, but the whole series took forever to make, so I really have no frame of reference. In continuing discussion of anime, though, tonight was my triumphant return to anime night after being out of town last week. So, unfortunately, there were only really the two of us, my buddy and me, Corey. I know him by his screen name, which I'm not going to share. I think his name is Corey, or Kobe. But he is the one with all this anime, and he usually is the one that screen shares it so that we can all watch it together. And we finished up the first season of Ghost in the Shell standalone complex, and then started in on Second Gig, which is the second series done by IG Productions. It's easy to say it's a different. It's more like a second season of standalone complex, but to say that it's a different Ghost in the Shell series is sort of misleading because there have been so many different kinds of Ghost in the Shell series at this point. There's the comic, standalone complex, Second Gig, the new one that the name I can't remember, which I believe was shown on Netflix. Can't remember now. And then, of course, all the films. My favorite remains the original comic, partly because it's unique in its sort of irreverent style, which is much more typical of Masamune Shirow way back in the late 80s and early 90s, before he really sort of got into digital imaging and graphic design and a lot more smut. Which isn't to say that his earliest stuff is Puritan by comparison, but it was much less of a focus and much less of a constant. The Major wore regular clothes almost all the time when she wasn't dressed in her odd leotard plus jacket getup that seemed inspired by the X-Men of the 90s. So the sort of ridiculous outfits that she had during Ghost in the Shell 2.0 Man Machine interface, that came later. That came in the 2000s. And I have read it, but it's very hard to follow. It's even more confusing than a lot of other Ghost in the Shell stuff. Standalone Complex is definitely the easiest to grasp. It just does its job as a police procedural really well. And so it's easy for people who have never seen the movies or read the comics to just sit and watch. But it's sort of funny that Ghost in the Shell standalone complex is one of my favorite anime of all time. Gundam Unicorn is probably my overall favorite anime of all time. And just sort of by happenstance, I've ended up watching one yesterday and another today, which means I probably ought to watch Karas tomorrow to round it out. We'll see about that. Maybe I will watch it, and then I'll do one of these about Karas, and I can talk my head off about it. But until then, I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better.